Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar today, 1-minute workflow for ad hoc requests, DocuWare send requests, lists, and stamps. My name is Nicole Schmeida. I'm the DocuWare marketing specialist, and I'll be moderating today's session. The webinar will be presented by Michael Gale, Senior Sales Director in Document Management here at DocuWare. Before we begin, just want to let you know the webinar is being recorded and will email out to you as soon as it's ready, along with a copy of the slides. And in the handout section of your GoToWebinar panel, you'll find 3 assets that you can download now, but we'll also email those to you as well. 2 are case studies where you can read about real organizations using DocuWare to process their high volumes of documents with efficient digital accounting workflows. And the other is an ebook that discusses what trends will shape the face of business this year. As you can see on the right side of the screen for today's agenda, Michael will go over how DocuWare can help you build a mobile workforce and review some of the DocuWare features, including lists, stamps, and the DocuWare send request feature, and then he'll go into a live demo of those solutions, and then we'll wrap it up for Q&A at the end. Thank you again for joining us, and now I'll pass it off to Michael.
Hey, thank you very much, Nicole. I appreciate it, and welcome everybody. So how has everything changed in the past 30 days? We need to update this because it's more like the past 60 days, right? Our lives have been flipped upside down, and we have absolutely jumped headfirst into what I'll call a new normal. And that's where you're going to hear dogs and kids and babies in the background, and all of a sudden, all those things that used to be unacceptable in the professional world of having remote meetings and working from home is all of a sudden acceptable because our families are around too. So what does that mean for us as organizations, right? We have to start to take a look at what our IT stack and what processes that we have that are currently available to employees and how we can start to support this from home workforce, right? So what this helps us do is keep everybody rowing in the same direction, even as times start to change and folks start to work from home. So what are some of the new questions and uncertainty that you're facing in your lives, right? How do you transition some of those informal ad hoc processes to more of a system-based workflow where you get feedback, right? Because you can't just reach across the desk and ask Sally, hey, is this vendor okay for us to use? Does this company look like a good company for us to start to get in business with? How do you make sure that the security of the information is kept in compliance and standards are kept intact? How do you better manage stuff than just shoving it in an email folder, right? How do you escape that slowness of the VPN? A lot of us are now logging onto our corporate infrastructure and we're now getting into other applications and we're starting to see all of that bog on the network infrastructure. How do we get that physical mail, right? This comes in from the USPS, it comes in from snail mail. How do I now start to route all of this stuff around to my users? How do I know if teams are completing their tasks? I can see that they're online, but how do I know that as a company, I'm not losing productivity? And that's what we're going to talk to you about today is DocuWare. DocuWare is a cloud-based document management solution and can take your workflows and make them into a digital automated workflow very easily. As you can see here, this is DocuWare on the screen in front of us on the laptop, and we also have DocuWare shown on the mobile phone. So it's available across multiple platforms so that we can support workers as they work from home, and we can support workers as they're on the go from their mobile phones. So let's get into some of the more specifics about why you guys joined today and what you're here to look at. And that's how do we fix some of those ad hoc workflows? How do we take those things that just come up every minute or every day in the organization, and maybe they come up at different times and we don't really have a structured process for them? How do we do that? Now that there's no more sneaker mail, how do we move those documents around the organization? And what I'm going to show you specifically today is through DocuWare lists and our send request feature. So what you can see on my screen is DocuWare, and specifically what you're seeing is the tab called lists. And we'll go through the browser here in just a moment. So if you're new to DocuWare, I'll walk you through what the infrastructure of the solution looks like. And you can see all of the different lists that show me the available documents in a nice formatted way for the users to be able to see them. So what are lists helping us do, right? Lists really help us be able to bring documents together or to stay on top of a process, right? So when we think about student registration or mortgage loan origination or processes that bring lots of different documents together, we can use lists to keep those documents intact so that we know exactly where things are at, and we can make sure that the criteria that we need to meet is being met. We can set up email notifications. So as these documents move through different processes, we can let users know with a simple email notification so that they can click a link and be taken to that document. And all of these notifications are being done automatically for the users. So what are some of the examples? We look here and we see that documents that come in at separate times, as I just mentioned, maybe I have like that mortgage loan origination or a student registration process, and I get different documents at different times, and those then need to populate and be updated in a list. Maybe I need to notify employees when a document has been updated, so we can have notifications set up so that maybe I'm storing HR policies and procedures manuals, or maybe I'm storing templates of my marketing documents so that I can make sure everybody is working from the right template. Anytime one of those templates is updated, we could have that notification go out automatically, right? We can use lists that contain expiration dates. So we start to think about those HR documents that may have an end date, or today's example is going to be looking more at contract management and how we can store a contract inside of the DocuWare system and then have notifications if that document were starting to expire, maybe 30 days out or 60 days out. And then what we use inside of these lists to make sure that the processes still continue are called DocuWare stamps. And we can use a DocuWare stamp for everything from, you probably have one of those receive stamps today in your organization when you receive something and you turn the little dial and you move the date from today to tomorrow when you come in and you stamp it right on that document. We can create a DocuWare stamp that re-emulates that same thing like you see. Maybe it's a username and a time and a date. Maybe it's a comment, or maybe it's some index data about the document. We can easily use these stamps so that people can visually see where the documents are at in a process, but they can also see what action has been taken on the document so far. And again, you'll get to see this as in DocuWare here in just a second in the demo. The next thing we're going to get into is our send request feature, which is fantastic. The send request feature is what we can use to take those little ad hoc workflows and we can route them around through the organization without having to build some really in-depth process-oriented workflow. Typically, we see these send requests as a single task, which you can do very quickly by responding to a yes or no type answer. And we can send this through an email so that the user is notified when they have something to do, so that it makes it very easy for them to come into DocuWare to make that selection. Now there's typically 5 steps, and there are 5 steps that you would take on a DocuWare send request. The first of those steps is to just choose a recipient. And as you notice, you just click the plus here, and then you can bring in a user and or a role if you need a group of users to take a look at that request. And you immediately find out if somebody has marked themselves out of the office. If they are, let's say, on vacation or on leave, you would immediately be able to see that. Then once you've chosen the users that you want to be assigned, you can then choose to see if you want the users to get them in a sequence or if you want them to get it all at the same time. And then if we do it in a sequence, we can literally have the users approve as we need them to in order, or we can send the request to all the users at the exact same time and choose to either complete the task once any user has signed off or once all of the users has signed off. And then next, we're going to fill in the subject and the text box, which here will then send a subject and a body of an email to the user with a link directly to this request. And then in addition, we can modify the decisions. Again, just a quick approve, reject, or a deny, approve, deny, or yes or no is something very simple that can be made on the document. Then we just send the request to the user. So we're going to get in and we're going to check this out now from DocuWare. So if we log into DocuWare, for those of you that are looking at the browser for the DocuWare solution for the first time, this is the view when you log in. On the right-hand side, we have the document viewer, and on the left-hand side, we have our DocuWare navigation. Inside the document viewer, we have a nice toolbar, which you'll see me go to today throughout the demo. And this is where I can easily print, email, download a copy of the document, or make an annotation on the document like a highlight or a redaction, or write some text on the document. A very easy place for me to go and just kind of work with the document just like it's laying out on my desk. Now to take you through the navigation side, which is over here on the left, we start off with what is called a document tray. And when you think about a document tray, you today probably have a spot on your desk where somebody can drop off a document for you to take a look at. And that's exactly what this is. This is just the electronic spot where somebody can send a document to you to take a peek at. And this could be for an individual user like Michael Gale. I might have a document tray for just him, but then we could also set up document trays for different departments. So we could set it up for like accounts payable and marketing or sales, or we could set up like what we have today in our demo, a contracts document tray where all of our different contracts are going to come in, and then whoever gets in to process the contract first can then store that inside the filing cabinet. And that's what's next over from our document trays is the filing cabinet. So once you take the document off your desk and you store it into DocuWare, you're going to put that document in a filing cabinet. And the filing cabinets all come with customized index fields. So these are all going to be built for the organization that is adopting DocuWare, and these are going to be customized based on what your needs are. So here we can see that inside the contract filing cabinet, I'm presented with the index fields here on the left. But if I were to open up the other filing cabinet that I have access to, like employee files, we notice that those index fields are going to completely change. And these index fields are how I'm going to store my information and categorize it, but also so I can go back and search for this. So for example, if I wanted to go back and search for all of the contracts for a particular location, right, I could drop down that location and then search for all contracts that are for that particular location or for the department or for that particular company, as you can see here on the screen. So searching becomes very easy to find what we need within DocuWare by using these simple index fields. In addition, we have a nice full text search. And this is fantastic for those companies that maybe you have the need to go and search for a part number on a contract or for something very specific. You could search your entire contract for one part number and then find every single vendor that may have used that part in a contract or something that they have sold to you as a company. So very powerful and flexible features within the search criteria. Next over from our filing cabinets, we have what are called lists. And lists are really just a dynamic search into the filing cabinet. And so what this does is it searches for any documents that meet the criteria in which the list is set up for. So in this case, I have lists set up for my signed contracts. So for this purpose, any contracts that I as a user, because this would be based on the person that's logged in, as you can see, Michael Gale is the logged in user, this would show me any of the contracts that I had executed as a user. Then we also have new contracts, which is where all of the contracts would show up that had come into the system that needed to be processed. Any contracts that have been signed would show up in this list that need to go back to the vendor. Then once the documents or once the contracts are stored, then based on the index criteria, notice that we have a nice list of all of our contracts that are on automatic renewal, or all of our contracts that expire the next 30 days or the next 60 days. And what you're starting to probably experience here and notice is that we can set up these lists based on how you manage your contracts or based on how you manage that process. So then whatever is important to you, based on the way that you do your workflow, we can set these lists up so that you can see those documents at any point in that process. And then lastly here, we have what are called tasks. And tasks are going to be things that are specifically assigned to me to do as a user, and those would show up under my tasks. And if I was an administrator, they would show up under monitor tasks. But more specifically, what we're going to be using underneath the taskbar today is for sent requests. So we're going to be able to see the send request that we're about to do, but then the users that we're asking to take action on the send request is about to have their task to do in the background. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring in our documents. But first, I want to talk to you about all of the different ways that we can get documents into DocuWare. One of those is we could just simply scan documents. So if we got in documents that were in paper-based format and we wanted to be able to scan those into DocuWare, we could simply do that by bringing up the DocuWare desktop apps. And here we can scan documents into the document tray, or we could set up configurations and automatically capture the text on the documents using what's called an OCR configuration, optical character recognition. I just take a sample document, draw some boxes on the page of where that text exists, and then the next time that it sees that document, it'll pull that text off automatically and store that document in my filing cabinet. In addition to being able to scan documents in, I could just import from a file folder. So I could just bring in a document specifically from DocuWare and put it, or I'm sorry, take a document out of an application and put it into a file folder and then capture that document within DocuWare. In addition to that, I could set up, let's say, a copier or a multi-function device, and I could set up a network folder so that I could then scan a document into that network folder, the network folder is monitored by DocuWare and automatically bring the document in. So the idea is there's lots of different ways that we can do this. If you know where the document exists on your computer, you can just simply click on import and browse out to a specific location and import that document. And in this case, we're actually just going to drag and drop 2 documents from our desktop, and we're going to put those right inside our document tray. And so now we're going to take these 2 contracts and we're going to actually store these in DocuWare so that we can initiate the process to have Michael Gale sign the contract for Lifestyle Rentals, and we're going to have the cleaning lady contract signed off by Peter Sanders, who is the manager of the departmental location. So if we go to store these contracts, we can highlight both of these, and then we can click on our store dialog. And at this point, we're going to select new contract. And as we do that, the index fields that are required for this particular type of document now populate for us. And so it becomes time to fill these out. So this can be very simple in DocuWare. So all I have to do is just hover over the text that I want to capture, and this would be the company name in which I'm going to execute the contract with. And I can just highlight over that, and it pulls the text over for me on the left-hand side. And then let's say that I have drop downs here. So I have specific locations as an organization where I have offices. I can now just select the location in which I'm going to be storing this contract for. And in addition, we want to store these by department. So I can make sure that these contracts are tracked back to the right department if, let's say, the signer leaves the organization. Now I have a list of all of my approved signers within DocuWare. So this is just a simple drop down, and this is going to be the contract that I'm going to execute. So I'm going to select myself as the signer. And here we can just put a contract end date. If it exists on the document, again, we could go and just capture that. So I think the June 30th date of 2020 exists right there. So I can just highlight over it and it pulls it over again on the left-hand side. And we'll just highlight that this is a lease agreement and then make our selection on whether or not this is an automatic renewal. And here we're going to choose no. Now, once we're done with this, we can go ahead and we can store this contract in DocuWare. And what you'll notice here in just a second is a number will pop up in this list because there will be a new contract for me to go in and review. But we're going to store this other contract for my colleague, Peter Sanders, so that he can go in and review the contract that he needs to sign as well. So now we're just going to, again, fill out the contract or the company name. We're going to fill out the location by just dropping down and selecting that. We can now fill out the department. Again, our signer's name here is Peter Sanders. Our contract end date is just going to be a year out from today. And our subject is going to be our contract for cleaning. And again, this is not an automatic renewal. So now we're going to click on store. So a couple of different things have happened here. One, you can see that if I access my list as a user, I'm going to have a new contract. And notice, because I'm signed in obviously as Michael Gale, this contract is showing up here for my review. So this is a new vendor for us. We haven't actually used Lifestyle Rentals before as an organization. So at this point, I think it would be appropriate for me, even though this isn't something that we typically do, just to get some sign off from my boss and from the location manager to make sure that he approves. So this is a perfect time to use a send request. So notice I can right click on the document and go down and click send request, or I can access my toolbar and I see a little person icon with a checkbox. Here, I can also initiate a send request. And as I talked in the PowerPoint slide, now we need to go through and configure who we want to sign or review this document. So in this case, we're going to go through and we're going to select some users. And so I want Brian Ford, and I also want Peter Sanders to take a look at this document. And I could now choose if I want Brian Ford to be done before, to take his task before Peter, then I can put that and choose to do this in a sequence. So now when I do this send request, it's going to first send the task to Brian and then second send the request to Peter, but make both of the users review the request. So now I can change the subject. Hey, how about this new vendor? If I can type today. And then I can even change the body or the text. Do you think we should do business with them? Right, and I can even change my decisions. Yes. No, and we can even choose to automatically place a stamp on the document. So that way I can have a quick audit trail of what the user's decisions were directly on the document. So now as soon as I click on send, what's going to happen in the background is DocuWare is going to send an email notification over to Brian Ford and to Peter Sanders. And now if I come up here as the user and I click on my sent requests, I can now see this document, this lease agreement that I have sent over to Brian and Peter to review. So if we log out now and we log back in as Mr. Brian Ford, we're going to now see that we have a new task. And if I had access to his email, I would certainly show that to you, but because of GDPR and several other privacy laws, I'm not allowed to have access to his email, even though he's a fictitious person. But now I can bring open this task in DocuWare and notice that I bring open this lease agreement. I can see the question, do you think we should do business with them? Now I can see the decisions. Notice we have a started on date. We can see who it's assigned to. So we can track the data right up here in this little dashboard of where the document's at in the process. We can now take our decision on the document and say, yes, I think we should do business. Okay to proceed, right? And click on confirm. And now as soon as I do that, the task is now being directed over to Peter Sanders to go ahead and make his decision on the document. So if we log out as Brian Ford, and now we log back in as Peter Sanders, we're going to be able to see that task that was sent to Peter as well. And so now if we see that, we can click on the document, right? And we can see, if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see the stamp from Brian Ford on May 12th saying, yes, okay to proceed. And since Peter agrees, do you think we should do business with him? Yes, we will say, okay, let's do it. And now we click on confirm. And what's going to happen in the background is it's actually going to take this task and it's going to route a notification back to myself, Michael Gale, because I'm the one that initiated this to Brian Ford and Peter Sanders, and let me know that that task has now been completed by both of those users. And I'll show you that here in just a second. And there it is. So I get an email letting me know that this has been completed. In a second here, we'll go through and we will click that link in just a moment. But first, we have to sign the contract that we also sent to Peter Sanders. So remember, we stored 2 contracts when we sent these over to Peter. So now Peter can review the contract. He sees that in his list, right, for new contracts for me to review. And now he can come on, he could do any text. So if he needed to put his printed name on the document, he could do that. And when he's ready to sign, notice that we can have another stamp that is a user's signature. And so what this is just a transparent version of Peter Sanders' signature. So now he can sign this document electronically right within his DocuWare account. And as soon as he does that, it now disappears from the new contract lists. And so now if we log back out and we log in as Michael Gale, we're going to see a couple of new things here. And as we log back in, the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to show you how this task was completed. So this was when we sent the send request around, we got the users, Brian Ford and Peter Sanders, to sign off. And so when we click on this link, now it will take me directly to that lease agreement, letting me know that both Brian Ford and Peter Sanders said, yes, let's proceed with this vendor. We're ready to sign off on this new office space. So we can close the task. And you know what? I just used that quick send request. I now feel comfortable to go ahead and initiate this lease agreement. So now I can click on the lease agreement and I can apply my own signature to the 4th page of the document. So I can review the document, make sure everything is correct, and I can go right here to my signature, Michael Gale, and I can now place this right on the tenant line within the contract. And now notice that once that has happened, we now come over to our list of all of our signed contracts. So now we have a view of both the contract that Peter Sanders has signed off on, the contract that Michael Gale has signed off on. And at this point, we could go ahead and email a copy of these to the customer or to the vendor to let them know that we have accepted their agreement and here is the signed copy of their document. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and complete. And you know, I've seen some organizations that instead of having a completion step here and going ahead and closing out the contract, they go ahead and put this into a review step to wait on counter signature. That way, when they store their contract, they've got all of the final signatures on one document stored within the DocuWare system. So thank you very much for going through our live demonstration of DocuWare today. And so at this point, I would like to turn it back over to Nicole Schmida from our marketing department to walk you through a wonderful case study and talk to you about some of our upcoming webinars before we go through our Q&A session.
All right, Michael, thanks for that great demo. So you'll see here on the screen, we just wanted to highlight one of the case studies that you'll find in your handouts. This is the director of IT at the Salmon Companies. They're a transportation partner with the United Postal Service. They use DocuWare Workflow to process 15,000 documents a month in their accounts payable processes. So we can see that they're being more effective and more efficient using the DocuWare Workflow features. Now, if we go to the next slide, you can see our next 2 webinars that are coming up. Next slide, please. You'll see we have one next Tuesday, a beginner's look at DocuWare, so you'll get a comprehensive overview of our DocuWare solution. And then the following Wednesday, we'll show electronic signatures. You can see more in depth. You saw a stamp today, but we'll go over electronic signatures in that webinar. So with that, we'll open it up for Q&A now. Again, what you saw was introductory of the DocuWare Cloud, send requests, lists, and stamps. But we want to definitely continue the conversation. If you want to see more in-depth features, there's various ways that you can connect with us. You can request a demo at the URL on the screen, or if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, you just want to talk to us, we're available anytime if you email us at contact.us@docuware.com. Or if you're already working with an authorized DocuWare partner, definitely reach out to them and you can get started and they can point you in the right direction. So with that, let's kick off the questions. First one comes from Eric. Is there an alert if a document is sitting in the document tray for over a predetermined amount of time?
Yeah, great question, Eric. The document tray is really just a temporary holding spot. So it's really just meant for, the place on your desk where you're going to have the documents sit while you're reviewing them. So there really shouldn't be a document tray that's created that doesn't have a user that's reviewing it on a daily basis because it's that temporary holding spot. And because it's that temporary holding spot, there's really not any notification set up if that document were to sit there for too long. But I can tell you with all the different capture tools that DocuWare has available, we can certainly get that document into a filing cabinet instead of allowing it to sit in a document tray so that you can have immediate visibility. So it's more of a configuration step to make sure that if you have documents that you want visibility into, those are stored into a file cabinet as opposed to a tray.
Great. Next question comes from Ryan. They're talking or asking about the signature stamp. How did you create that signature stamp that was manually applied to the contract?
Yeah, so in DocuWare, it's very simple. So inside of stamps, we have the ability to create what is called an image stamp. And that image stamp is where then we can upload our signature. So if we go in and we actually see my signature in here, that's all I've done is I've created a stamp here. I've unchecked all the predefined entries. I've unchecked that I want a border, and I can choose to make that background white or transparent. And in this case, it's taking just the black ink that I've signed, and this is actually just the Adobe version of my signature, but it could be my black signature that I had written on a piece of paper that is then used as a stamp, and we can create some indexing and behaviors behind it, but it really is a great tool so that if I just need to easily sign a document in a document tray or anytime within a filing cabinet, I can apply that stamp. And we have a couple of different options here because we can, if let's say this stamp acts as a signature, such as my signature on the document here, we can actually lock down the annotations. So what happens is if we were to choose this as a signature stamp, the document would no longer allow any annotations to be applied to it. Only additional signature stamps could actually be applied to the document, assuming that maybe more than one person needs to sign it, in a given process. Great question.
Nice. Next question comes from Neil. When you annotate or stamp a document, does the original document remain unchanged?
It does. So the original document in DocuWare is never going to be affected by DocuWare. It's always going to maintain its original integrity. So no matter how that document came into DocuWare, the original file type would be kept and the original document would be preserved. And that stamp then just becomes a layer on the document that you can then force so that if you always want that layer to show up upon the export, then you can force it so that the document can only be taken out with the annotations. Again, great question.
Got it. Next question comes from Anna. I think I can answer this, but I'll let you add to it if you want to, Michael. Are there any Canadian case studies? So we do have a case study page in our website that I can email to you after this webinar. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, Michael.
Nothing to add. You nailed it.
Okay, cool. Next question comes from Steven. Does eSignature come with DocuWare Cloud?
So the API integration that we have developed today, we have a certified integration with Validated ID. We are working with another one that will be released in the upcoming weeks. But the API that is available is a free service for all DocuWare Cloud customers, and you just have to make sure that you have a DocuWare account and a Validated ID account. And then the connection between the two of those is included for no cost in the cloud, and there's an add-on module if you're an on-premise customer.
Great. Just want to remind everyone on the line, we will email you the recording and the copy of the slides and the handouts as well as soon as they're ready. So in case anyone needs to jump off the line, you will be receiving all these materials. We do have a few more questions. Next question comes from Wanda. Can you lock a document to prevent changes to the original document as it is routed through the workflow?
So again, using that signature stamp, even if I was to use this in a workflow, it would go ahead and lock that document down. And you also have the ability to change in the workflow module. You have the ability to make that workflow step to act as a signature stamp, and then that would also lock the document down from annotations. But again, we don't ever change the original document. It would just be changes to the layers on top of the document. But again, great question.
Got it. Next question comes from Lindsay. Do you have to be a full user to sign a document, or can a workflow user sign a document?
We will actually have to get back to you on that question because I need to verify whether or not the image stamp can be applied using the workflow user license. So we will respond to that question to the person that asked it.
Okay, looks like we have one more question. It comes from Jean, and this might go back to your earlier answer about e-signatures. Is there a signature verification?
Yeah, so there's really, two types of signatures, at least and there's more, but there's really two types of signatures in terms of the way that I showed the presentation today. And the first signature would be just done in DocuWare, where you just apply a stamp, and you could build a workflow to make sure that a stamp that is a signature stamp has been applied by just applying some sort of index value once that signature has been applied. So then you could have a workflow determine whether or not someone's signature stamp has been used to sign the document, and you could get a little bit more granular within the workflow if you need multiple signatures in multiple places. Then the other type of signature would really be one that we're doing through a system like Validated ID or like a DocuSign type system, where we are literally transferring the document over to what's called a digital signing authority. That digital signing authority then takes the document, routes it to the user, sometimes uses multi-factor authentication like email and an SMS, text, cell phone code, and then has the user sign it and then passes that document directly back to us through the API. So in terms of the verification process, whether it's an external signature that you need to use a digital signing authority for, or whether it's an internal signature, yes, we can certainly have a verification process to make sure that's done. I just wanted to make sure explained how we did that.
Right. Okay, so actually two more questions came in. I think we can definitely get those in. Going along with signatures, someone asked, or Salim asked, can we remove or undo a signature?
So it depends on how the signature is set up. With a stamp, you're not going to be allowed to remove that by design, because once the signature has been applied to the document, you would not want that to be removed. However, when you do make annotations on the document, so if I had just come right here and put my name and put Michael Gale, and then even closed the document and came back to it, right, I could store those changes, then I could come back into the document, and then I could actually edit that annotation and remove it. But notice this stamp in the top right-hand corner, if I go to try to remove it, it cannot be removed from the document, nor can the signature.
Right. Okay, last question comes from John. Before we wrap up today, can you send a reminder email to a user that a task has been active for a long time?
Absolutely. So within a workflow step, you're able to create a escalation path and a due date path and a reminder date. So you're able to escalate through a reminder notification through email and able to even move that to another user if need be.
All right, great. So again, if you guys have any more questions, if Michael, if you don't mind putting up that last slide again, you can reach us at contact.us@docuware.com. Maybe not today, next week, next month. We're definitely here for you. Or again, contact your authorized DocuWare partner. All right, with that, thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, Michael, for the demo. Look out for the email from me, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Take care.